I'm so excited to have this conversation with Coach Locksley. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Victor Mullins. I am the Associate Dean for Undergraduate Studies here at the Robert A. Smith School of Business, and I also serve as a Diversity Officer for the Smith School. Coach, thank you so much for having this conversation with us this morning. We're so glad to have you. It's going to go by very quickly. We only have 35 minutes, and that's what it's going to be, a conversation. So again, thank you. And I'm going to get started, Coach.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Well, let's start, Coach, this morning with the notion of relationships. You and I have a relationship, and it actually was developed through a mutual relationship, a student at that time who connected the two of us, and he has now since graduated and he's part of your staff. I have adopted a mantra that regardless of what your leadership position is, that relationships is key. And actually, it is one of my church mantras, that it is not about religion, it's about relationships. Chat about the notion of relationships from your journey as a coach and as what I consider you to be a change agent.
Yeah, it's funny you should say that, Dean Mullins. I'm of the same opinion about these relationships, and when you look at the layers and that whole 6 degrees of separation in terms of helping people progress in whatever field or challenges or obstacles that they may have. And what I found, this is year 30 for me in the coaching profession, and I like to think, and hopefully I don't upset anybody, but I like to think of myself as a teacher. I'm a professor, and I have a platform here as the leader of a football program to try to impart life lessons and life skills to our players. And one of the huge, big reasons I am who I am today is because of the people that have shaped me, that I've become, the coach I've become. And I mean, there've been so many. And again, I grew up in a single parent home, and I talk about it all the time. And the people that had the biggest impact on me as a child were my coaches. I was born and raised in the Southwest section of DC, and participated at the Boys and Girls Club, which was like the hub of my neighborhood. And we had police officers that served as our coaches. And, one of the things when people ask, well, what made you get into coaching? And I think back, so many times when you grow up in a home with two parents, the kids grow up wanting to do what their parents do. And so the male role models in my life were my coaches at the youth programs that I played for. And so as I worked through, and I got a degree in business and marketing, and I did an internship, I knew that the business world was not for me. I just got pretty bored with the after lunch 4-hour wait to go home. And I wanted to get into coaching. And it was because of the relationships that I developed with my college coaches that started my career off to where I am today.
Coach, as I listen to you, I feel your energy. I call what I'm feeling from you, and I want you to correct me if I'm wrong, bliss. I take a group of students to South Africa each year, and we talk about the concept of bliss. Others may call it passion. Others may call it an assignment. I call it bliss because this is what I wish for Bradley and Rachel and all of the participants who are listening to this conversation today, that their interest in sports or entertainment, that they will find a place where they're waking up in the morning and they're going to work, and they're just so excited to go and add meaning to that space, and they're getting paid to do it. That's why I call it bliss.
No, there's no doubt. It's funny because just pulling into campus now, one of the routes I take to come here now, this is my third stint back at Maryland. Came here in the late 90s. 97 was my first go around as an assistant. I was a young assistant here under the staff of Ron Vanderlinden. I was here for 4 or 5, actually 6 seasons, left. And then I returned in 2012 under Randy Edsel, left. And then I came back as the head coach. And so my drive into work, I get to drive past, what's known as Cole Fieldhouse. And I spent many a day in Cole Fieldhouse as a fan rooting for the basketball team back in those days. But to be able to pull up on campus at a place that I grew up rooting for, and to walk through the doors and be able to have an impact on the lives of numerous 18 to 22-year-olds. To me, that's servant leadership, and
Right.
my whole life has been fulfilled because the things that I was given as a student athlete and as a athlete by my coaches, I get a chance to impart on the next generation. And so for me, you that word, I've never used it, but it is definitely bliss for me when I drive into campus and have an opportunity to see that. I mean, I get paid to do this, and like you, I don't want to whisper too loud. Like, I don't want more money either, but I would do it for free probably if given the opportunity back in the day. And I'm so fortunate and blessed to have an opportunity to do a job like the one I had.
Listening to you and telling the story about the Boys and Girls Club and just being rooted and grounded by relationships and mentors, my thought is this, that I would say to students, don't think too much about your competencies and your skills because it's within who you are. The hardest thing for people to do is focus on themselves as opposed to coming up with a roadmap that someone has told you to do and that you may not be happy. Um, what are your thoughts on just basically focusing on the inner self of competencies? You are a leader, you communicate well, you empower people. Um, what advice would you give to the students who are still in an unknown territory of I'm not sure what to do and how I go about finding a space in sports in terms of a leadership?
Yeah, I would say this, and there is no perfect answer for that question. But what I tried to do is follow your passion. The things that you enjoy or the things you're very passionate about, and we each, like you said, within ourselves have certain things that motivate us. I would say move or gravitate toward those things. And much like what you just hit on, Dean Mullins, I'm a big believer that, every day you wake up, it's important for you to make sure that you understand that enjoy being where you are. Like, old ball coach I worked for, Nick Saban, used to say, be where your feet at. And I know that's not great vernacular, but he said, be where your feet are. And
Hmm.
basically what that meant was, whatever it is you're doing right now, be the best at doing that and continue to try to improve yourself. And it's like you said, and I ask my team this all the time. I said, let's just get 1% better every single day. And I think the more you look at that, and as you start trying to figure out a path for a career in sports, um, follow your passion, follow your heart. I would tell you, when you do things that you're passionate about, it's that bliss that you talked about. It's like you're not working, because I don't look at what I do as I'm actually working. I feel like I'm doing what I was brought here on this earth to do, which was to impart some of my experiences and the things, including the adversities that I faced, on the next generation to be able to pay things forward. Because I would not be sitting here if it wasn't for, like you talked about, the mentorship and the relationships with people that poured their time and energy into me. So one of the things I always say is, pay it forward by pouring your time and energy into others, and still while in trying to improve yourself 1% at a time.
This conference, Coach, has been founded to empower students, and we talked about it a little bit, to be innovative, ambitious, and fearless. And I look at those all as not buzzwords. In order for you to be a meaningful leader, you have to innovate, especially in a pandemic. That we had to innovate. Look at where we are now. We are sitting here talking on a hop-in experience. And the ambitious and the fearlessness, I call it grit. If you don't have that grit, because a roadmap to sports in terms of having a leadership position is not, we don't have this on a piece of paper. You're going to have to grit and grind and try to find your way to that zone. How do you empower? You talked a little bit about it. Your players off the field.
Yeah, that's a great question, that Dean Mullins, and it starts with me. Is that, so much of my job, people think is the coaching the football piece. Well, what I've learned in 30 years of doing this with numerous of 18 to 22-year-olds is the football piece is the easiest part of my job, because that's what they love to do. And so I always use this analogy that those 13 Saturdays they get to play football when we play games, they're responsible for 13 Saturdays of the year if they're in my program. The other 352 days are mine. I'm responsible for. And what I try to do is, I use the analogy, I want to send them back out of this program a better version of which they came. And the way I do it is I create programming that I think was beneficial to them as to help them become better sons, better brothers, better future husbands, better fathers. And so all those different things, we create programming, and some of the things that we try to do, and it starts with what you talked about, the relationship. We created a unique program here where I pair each of my players up with a CEO or a powerful community leader here in the DMV to create a mentorship program. So we have guys that have mentors that are billionaires that are in this DMV area, and what they learn is by developing meaningful relationships with these mentor-mentee relationships, their mentors' network now becomes their network. And then they're exposed to so many different things outside of just being a Maryland football player, which I think really, really important. As you know, I have a bunch of guys that came to me and they asked about creating a Maryland football investment club.
Right. I was hoping you would talk about that. So go ahead.
These are young men in our program, a lot of them, which unlike myself, who has a business degree and has some knowledge of investments, these guys came to me and said, Coach, we want to learn about stocks and investing and things like that. And so we have some players on our program that are part of the Smith Business School that approached me and said, can we start a Maryland Football Investment Club? I reached out to all the different mentors in our program that we created for the mentorship program. We have some in the financial service industry. I placed a call to you, and you put me in touch with the people there at Smith School, and we're in the process of kicking off a Maryland Football Investment Club. So again, everything we try to do, we have a player development staff that the only task that I ask of them is to create programming that will allow our players to leave here a better version of themselves. I mean, even dealing with some of the social justice issues of the past year, we've created safe spaces for our team, and we have a diverse team. So social justice issues don't just affect us as minorities. We have people on our team that are on the other side of it, who it affects them just as much. And when you are part of a team, the importance of having respect for people's opinion and just anything I can do to impart what I call life skills that allow them when they leave Maryland to be the best version of themselves because of the time they spent as a football player here or as a student on campus. We go above and beyond to do and provide those resources for our players.
If I can only imagine that if I am a player and you are pouring into me like that to look beyond the notion that I am playing football, that I'm actually going to be someone who's adding another set of value, because we're all holistic beings. That you are a coach, but you also are a father leader. You actually are also, there are parts of you that you might not even coach, and me too, have discovered yet that you're going to provide value to someone else. But to tell your players that, to me, and you should also know that that's what I share with the prospects, that when I meet with them, they don't expect that I'm going to be pouring into them that way, but I do. Just saying, why are you here in this space? And what are you going to do to make yourself better after you leave? That's so important. So that's empowerment at its best. Now, you mentioned the notion of social justice, and it's so important, especially in a time like this. I'm going to switch for a moment to my role as diversity officer. When you talk about the notion of diversity and inclusion, it is my hope that we will find ourselves as leaders, as partners, as teammates, as units, as companies that has created an environment whereby we are relying on each other's strengths to frame and solve problems, to develop issues and what have you. I can only imagine. I used to think that even before knowing that we would have this conversation, that I would say, to me, the best element of teams or sports teams, because when they are on the fields, they are not thinking about color or what they're thinking. They're thinking about, look, this is the strategy. We got to win. And I always used to think, well, if we can take that approach and bring it to organizations, and I just don't think that the organizations look at it that way. What are your current thoughts when it comes to, sports and its role in the notion of social justice and diversity and what have you?
Yeah, you hit on so many different points that are kind of the baseline for what I'm all about, and what I want our program to be about. And it starts with, number one, understand is, if the world could be more like a locker room where we're all on one team, and we recognize that it's about one team. And like you said, once we get into that huddle or that locker room, and we're under that one team here, the University of Maryland, representing that, or you're human, we're all human, that one team, it's amazing what can be accomplished when you get a bunch of different personalities, genders, race, socioeconomic, religious, together. And it starts on the premise of respect. Respecting that we all are equal. We all, I created a organization called the National Coalition of Minority Football Coaches, and the genesis of it is, I want to help prepare, promote, and produce more Mike Locksleys. When you look at the economic impact I've been able to have, I did a study where, since I've been coaching for 30 years, I've taken numerous guys that grew up in places like I grew up, and I've made them over $750 million with the money they've made playing or being affiliated with this game. And it's a game. And none of this would be accomplished if a lot of different people besides myself were not involved in the lives of these young men that have come through my program. And so I think it's a responsibility. Like, I talk about paying things forward, and I created the coalition with the premise of paying it forward. Whereas if I can find ways to create opportunities, I didn't say get people jobs or have people give us something. I said create opportunities for qualified minorities, and that includes women. So many women are now playing a powerful role in the game of football, and even here in my organization here at Maryland. But if we could just find ways to give them the skill, which we call the preparation, promote the fact that they do a big time job at the jobs that they're given, and then find a way to get them out in front of the decision makers that make these decisions. The game of football, which I focused the organization on just football, because I wanted to be really, really concise in terms of who we wanted to affect, and we want to affect football. And I thought it was really important that, the more minorities we are putting in these positions, the more opportunities we'll create for the next generation moving forward. And so, big believer that our players have these platforms now, especially with what social media has allowed. College athletes are getting and gaining so many more rights with this name, image, and likeness coming out, and the brand that they create while they're here participating in football under the guise of amateurism. I just think it's a great opportunity when used correctly. And that's what, again, going back to some of the programming that I referred to with these 18 to 22-year-olds, teaching them the proper way to educate themselves on issues, and then speaking intelligently on them because you've educated yourself, and then creating a platform to where you can go out and make a change, because everybody knows what the problems are, but let's focus on being solution based. And that's what I've tried to do with this program when it comes to diversity and social issues. And it's like, okay, that's the problem. Now, what are the answers? And that's what I've always done in my life was, let's not just talk about the problem. Let's come up with some solutions, and then do the work, or have the grit to finish the work to make a change.
What is your thought? You had talked about the notion of, I actually think that everyone has a platform. Bradley has one, Rachel, we all have platforms.
Right.
And I was listening, and you can just see from Kaepernick to LeBron to others, they're beginning to use their platforms to just share their narrative on what they think could be some of the solutions to move this country along. Just touch us a little bit more on the power of the platform of the person.
Yeah, my big thing, and I say this to our players all the time, is I want them to use their platforms. I want them to speak out on things that are important to them. But I emphasize the importance of educating themselves on the topics. There's nothing worse than hearing what somebody else said and not doing your due diligence of
Right.
studying to find out, if it all is the same, and then you speaking on something, but you're not speaking on it intelligently. Now,
Yeah.
however you interpret the information is your opinion, and you're entitled to it. And I'm all for them sharing it, but I try to have them and teach them to do it in a manner that allows them to be seen in a great light and not negative. Athletes have used their platform for years, from back in the Olympics, the 36 Olympics, to Muhammad Ali during the wars. I mean, there's been so many athletes that have used their platforms against social justice and issues that have affected our world. And so, again, I'm encouraged that this next generation of athletes understand the responsibility of being maybe someone that people look up to or respect. But my big thing is within our programs, let's educate ourselves first and foremost to make sure that when we do formulate opinions, we're doing it from a place of intelligence, that you've educated yourself and not just jumped on the bandwagon of what someone else thinks or how they interpret it.
All right, two more questions, Coach. You talked about failure, and I remember one of the best student commencement speeches here at Smith was a student 2 years ago who started his speech off with "Congratulations, class! Now let's go fail," and it just threw everyone off their guard. And he talked about the notion that if you're going to fail, I want you to fail fabulously. Isn't that a powerful thing to say? You actually
Wow.
touched on it, that you look at failure as growth. I just want you to elaborate a little bit more, because we are going to fail. I failed just about, a moment, and then I celebrated. You have to grieve a little bit,
Yeah.
but then you move on and say, what did I learn from this? Can you just talk a little bit more on failure?
Yeah, I think, like I said earlier, failure creates that ability to go quality control. And that's one of my favorite words. Anybody that meets me knows. I read or heard somewhere where it says it just takes you to have success one time to be very successful. It just takes one time. I mean, you could fail at a marriage, you can fail in business, you can fail in all, but you know what? It's okay. It just takes you to have success one time to make an impactful change in your life. And you never know when that one time is. And so many people get paralyzed by failure that then they become afraid to do it again. And me, man, I'm not afraid of it at all. I'm a big believer, again, educating myself, going with the passion that I have for whatever it is, the decision I make, and then I'm going to make the decision right. And if I fail at it, it isn't because I didn't try. And then I'm going to look at why I failed, and then I'm going to figure out a way to go succeed the next time, whether it's in that same scope or that same area, or whether it's something different. But I just don't think there's any chance of growing as a person if you don't have adversity and you don't learn to overcome it. And that's part of what we do here in our program. We teach them that every time you fail, that gives you a chance to grow, learn, and become a better version of yourself.
Coach, what parting words do you want to give to our students? We are the opening conversation, and so they have many conversations to go. But what parting words would you want to give to these participants who have come to this conference to learn more about how to be empowered in the element of leading in sports?
I would just leave them with this, and this is something that I talk about, again, something I'm very passionate about. In 2017, I lost my son. My son was murdered here in Maryland. And what it taught me, I was a person that didn't respect time. I was a person that just took time for granted. And one of the premises and mantras of my program now is to maximize it. Time is the most valuable commodity we have, and you can't get it back. It's more valuable than money. And so when people give you their time, or you give people your time, you're giving something that is so, so valuable. And so one of the things I try to do now, after losing my son, and I have these hourglasses all around my office, as a way to remind me of just the value of what time is that this is, I want to live today like tomorrow is not a promise for me. When I lay my head down at night, I want to know that I did everything I possibly could to take full advantage of what today had to offer me. And hopefully, if I'm able to wake up the next day, I'm going to get up and I'm going to do it again and then do it again. So I'll leave you with this. Time is the most valuable commodity we have. Don't waste it. Live every day as if there is no tomorrow, and go after those dreams, man. I'm a living testament. I dreamed of becoming a head coach at the University of Maryland when I got into coaching 30 years ago, and here I sit. So dream big, live big, and really respect the fact that time is very valuable.